Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Hi, I'm Maria. I am the owner of Baffling Beads AT, a shop for handmade beaded jewelry over on Etsy. And also very recently I opened another shop, Baffling Beads for You, where I sell check glass beads. Welcome to my channel if you're new here. Today I want to talk about the flat peyote stitch, both the even and odd count one. And I'm pretty sure that you have seen this technique already, especially if you're interested in beaded jewelry. It's a very common technique to use for bracelets. So this would be such an example of the peyote stitch. And there are also tubular ones, which I'm not going to talk about today. You can also make rings with it, as you can see, and earrings. The stitch actually looks very much like the brick stitch, as you can see here. So this actually is a brick stitch, but you could also do it with a peyote stitch. And then cuff bracelets, super wide bracelets. You can do motif ones with it, and of course also ombre patterns, as you can see here. And yeah, I'm going to show you today how to use this technique, because in the future I want to use this technique for some of my own bracelets and earrings. So this is going to be the tutorial for the basic technique again, and then I will continue with designs just the way I did with my herringbone stitch tutorial and also the brick stitch tutorial. And some examples where I used this stitch are these earrings. So I used the peyote stitch for these. It's an odd count. You can also currently get these in my jewelry shop. I made a necklace with the peyote stitch. It's pretty much a choker, so it's very tight on the neck. You would wear it like this. It's also an odd count. So this is the choker I did with an odd count peyote stitch. I tapered down the ends and then used wire guards together with an extension chain and lobster clasp, because I personally prefer small clasps. I don't really like the wide ones. But of course you can also use wide clasps for your bracelets. So yeah, I'm going to show you today both the even and the odd count, how to taper down the end of your bracelet, and also how to add more thread in case you need to add more to reach the desired length of your bracelet. So I think for this choker I at least needed to add more thread twice, maybe even 3 times. So that was quite the effort. And I've never even worn it. I thought about adding it to my shop, but I'm quite unsure whether people would pay the price, so we will see. But for now, let me show you this new basic beading technique. Today I'm working again with Miyuki Delica beads. For the even count I will use the 3 lighter colors, and then for the odd count I will add a 4th color for the middle row. And for all my bracelets I use Miyuki beading thread in size D, this is the golden color, and a beading needle size 12. And then for later on, when I want to add different clasps, I've got a lobster clasp, a wire guard, a magnetic wider clasp. I'm not sure how you call these, I forgot it. So anyway, it's this one. You can slide it into each other and it's magnetic. And then also some 15/0 Miyuki round beads. So let's start with the even count peyote stitch. Cutting a piece of thread. Since I won't be making a whole bracelet, doesn't really matter how long it is. As always, I don't like using stopper beads. Feel free to use a stopper bead to stop your beads from falling off your thread, but I usually just place my thumb and the second finger on my thread and I just hold it. That's good enough for me, but feel free to use a stopper bead. So if we take this choker as an example, I would start my first and second row by taking up a white bead, a golden bead, a golden bead, a white bead, a white bead, a golden bead, and so on, because these two rows make up the first row where the beads sit like little bricks on top of each other. Okay, so the first row is spaced out by those beads which sit in between a little shifted to the side. So the first row would be the white, the golden, the white, the golden, the golden, the white, golden and the white bead. And then the second row would be the golden, the white, the golden, the white, the golden, the white and the golden bead. Please note that this is an odd count, so that's why the first row of beads has one bead more in it than the second row. Both rows make up basically the first column of this bracelet, so that we don't have any spaces in between, of course. Because I want to have a striped bracelet, I would take up a light bead, then the second color, then 2 beads of the third color, the second color and the first color. I will push it down to where my fingers are, and then I take up a light color again. And then I want to place the new bead right next to the other light bead of the first color. So I push my needle through that second last bead of the second color, and that places the new bead right next to the bead of the very first color. And then, as you can see, I'm coming out of the bead of the second color, and I now want to add a bead right next to this third bead. So again, I push my needle down through the fourth bead so that I can place the new bead right next to the third bead. And it looks like this. Then I'm coming out of the fourth bead and I want to add a bead right next to the fifth bead down here. And I will do that by taking up a bead of the second color and going down through the sixth bead. And this is the start of a flat even count peyote stitch with 6 rows counting from the bottom to the top. So now I'm coming out of that 6th bead down there, and I will now add a bead right next to that last bead. And I will do that by going up through that bead of the second color. That places the new bead right next to bead of the first color in the bottom row. Now you see that you're coming out of the bead of the second color. So here's the next spot that needs to be filled. So you're taking up a bead of the third color and you're going up again through that bead that sticks out. Then you see that you need to add a bead right into the space. So you take up a bead of your second color and you go up through that last bead. There you have it. And then you just continue like this. So this is an even count peyote. I would say this is actually a good width for a ring. But let's continue with the odd count. So for this one I will add a fourth color for the middle row. And I will start exactly the same way as before, with the difference that I take up one more bead than before. So instead of 6, I will start with 7. I will place my fingers and hold on to my thread. And then I take up first color, second color, third color, fourth color, third color, second color, first color. We'll push it down so that you have all those beads on your thread that will make up your first and second row. So again, we're coming out of that last bead. So first we will place a bead right next to that one. So again, you're going down through that second last bead. Then it looks like this. Now we want to place a bead right next to that bead of the third color. That means we will take up a bead of that same color, so the third color, and we will go down through that center bead, which is the fourth bead. Now we need to add again a bead of the third color, going down through that second bead. Pull your thread tight and it looks like this. And then next we will add a bead of the first color, and then you go up with your needle right through that bead where you want to place the new bead right next to it. So now we're coming out of that bead on the first row, and you see that we will next need to add a bead of the second color. So you pick up a bead of the second color and you push your needle up through the third bead, and you place it right next to the second bead. So now we're at the middle row, which means that we need to add a bead of the fourth color, and you push your needle through the fifth bead. And again we need to add another bead of the second color. Next we take up a bead of the first color and we go down to that next bead. Take up a bead of your third color, go down through that fourth bead, and again you go down to that second bead. That next bead, by going up with a bead next to it, where you want to add the new one, we are in the wrong spot. We can't just pick up a bead and add onto this bracelet. You need to weave your thread through this bracelet so that you're coming out of this bead with your thread so that you can add the next bead. So what we're going to do is we go up with that bead on the second row, counting from bottom to the top, so in this direction, which is shifted to the left hand side. And you pull your thread through. Don't pull too hard. So if you're a tight beader and you've got a lot thread tension going on, try to relax a little bit so that your bracelet doesn't curve too much when you're done with it. Because what will happen is that you will have more thread on this side and less thread on this side. And if you pull too much when you're beading your loops down here, then you will have very tight tension down here, which will make your bracelet curve like this. So try to relax a little bit and don't pull too hard. So next we're going down again through those beads on the right hand side, all the way down, and then up with that bead on the right hand side. And now you're in the spot where you can add beads again. So you take up a bead of the second color, a bead of the fourth color, another bead of the second color. Now we're going down again. You take up a bead of your first color, a bead of your third color, another bead of your third color, and you will add the last bead again by taking up the bead of your first color and going up through that first row, counting from the bottom to the top of your bracelet. So now we're in this spot again. We can't add any beads. So what you will do is you go up through that bead on the second row on the left hand side. You pull your thread only lightly through those beads, and then you go back down on the right hand side through both rows. Pull in that thread and you go up again through that bead on the right hand side. Now you will add those two bead rows again. No, looking from the left hand side to the right hand side. So you take up a bead of your second color, bead of your fourth color, second color, first color, third color, third color, and first color by going up through that bead on your very first row from bottom to the top. And now you will make that thread loop again, and you will continue adding those 2 rows of beads. So this is the piece of peyote stitch I have right now, and let's assume that this piece of thread is too short to finish my bracelet. So what I will do is you cut your new piece of thread, you thread your needle, and then what you will do is you go up through that bead where you then need to add a new bead to your bracelet. You pull your thread through, you hold it like you do when you start your bracelet, and then you will just continue by taking up your beads and adding them to your bracelet. So let's do 2 rows and keep on holding that thread, because otherwise you will pull it through if you don't have enough loops and turns by weaving your bracelet. So next you pick up 4th color again, you hold your thread and you just keep on adding those beads. You make the loop again, and you go up again, and you will keep on going. Okay, so now what you've got is you got that bracelet end with your working thread, and you've got the bracelet end with your tail thread. But you also have those two loose ends because you needed to add more thread to your bracelet. So you thread your needle with one of those loose ends you want to weave in, and then you just go up some beads and you continue up. It's really helpful when the new tail thread isn't too short so that you can properly pull your thread through. So what you do, you will just kind of randomly just weave it in, make some turns and some circles. Because you have two loose ends at the same spot, I will weave in one of those loose ends more at the top of the bracelet and one at the bottom of the bracelet. Because if you weave it in from bottom to the top just in this one spot, what you will get is a pretty stiff spot in your bracelet, which is less flexible than the rest of your bracelet. So I would advise to use pretty much the length of your bracelet to weave in, and not just weave it in from the bottom to the top with both ends. And I just go a few beads down again, and I lost my thread because it's too short. And you pull through, and you can cut this one. So that's one less loose end. Now we've got the original working thread that's sticking out of the bracelet. So we need to weave that one in too. You thread your needle. Because I wove in the tail thread on the top side of the bracelet, I will stay down here with the other thread. You have added thread length to your bracelet, and it won't come loose anywhere because that thread is woven in pretty tightly. You have this side with your tail thread and this side with your working thread. So now let's assume that you have finished the length of your bracelet and now you want to add a clasp. So I will show you two options. My preferred option is to add a lobster clasp to an odd count peyote stitch, because the lobster clasp is tiny and you have that middle row where you can perfectly add it onto. So what I will do is I will taper down the end so that I have only one bead sticking out. You continue by adding one bead of the second color, one bead of the fourth color, and one bead of the second color. So you take up those beads and you will add them. like this. And what you will see is that if you continue this way, your bracelet will get slimmer. So instead of adding a bead to the upper and the lower row, we only want to add a bead to the third and the fifth row, so that the bracelet gets slimmer towards the end. So for doing this, you will need to manage to come out with your thread out of this bead. So as before, we will form loops with our thread. So I would go down these two beads, so the upper two rows. You will form a loop by going back up again, and then you go back down through those two beads. Now you're coming out of this bead and you can add 2 more beads to further slim down your bracelet. So now we added those 2 beads, and you see that we now need to add 1 final bead to the middle row. So again, you need to find a way to make a loop and get to this position here, so that we're coming out of this bead. So I will further go down. I will go up 2 beads on the left hand side, go back down 1 bead, and you go back up again the second and the third bead row. You take up that very last bead and you will add it to your bracelet. Now you can see we have this 1 bead that sticks out. And I will now want to add a wire guard, because as we know, wire guards make everything better and more secure. At least that's my opinion. Okay, so for adding a wire guard, we will need to come out of this very last bead. So I go up 1 more, I go down the bead on the left hand side, I go down another bead on the left hand side, then up on the right hand side and back down through both beads. So I'm now coming out of this 1 bead. I will usually add some 15-0 beads so that I can hide the thread. And I will then bend my wire guard a little so that the ends are closer to each other. Because that 11-0 bead is super tiny and you don't need such a huge arch. So now you take up a 15-0 bead, push it down. You go through one end of that wire guard and you go back down through the other end of that wire guard. You check that your thread is on that bridge and you pick up another 15-0 bead and you go through that 11-0 Yuki Delica. And then it will look like this. So instead of going right back through that wire guard, what I will do instead is, to make it more secure, I go back down through 2 bead rows, and I will go up all the way again, so that you don't have all that pulling and wear and tear on just that one bead, but instead you will distribute it onto pretty much that whole bracelet on that end. So I go again, I go up another 2 bead rows, and then I go back down again with that Miyuki Delica bead that sticks out and where we added that wire guard to. And then again I will pass through that 15O bead, that wire guard, and again the other end of the wire guard and the 15O bead, and through that Miyuki Delica bead. So I would do this at least 2 times. So if you can manage, you can also pass through 3 times. That will make it more secure. As you can see, my thread is getting pretty short, so what we will do now is we will weave in that thread again. Don't forget to make some loops. And there, I lost it again. Let's pass through 3 bead rows. And then, only because my thread is too short and I won't make this a bracelet, I will cut it now. But you really should weave in your thread properly if you're making a bracelet. So this is the way I prefer to do it. Adding those lobster clasps. I like it dainty and small. And of course you can also add an extension chain like this. What you can also do is you can add such a wider clasp, and this bracelet is too slim for this clasp, but what you would be doing is, depending on where you want to add those bead loops for that wide clasp, I would then add the beads that would need to stick out of your bracelet. So in my case I would go for the 2nd and the 6th row. So the rows of the 2nd color. And then I would want to add loops with the help of my Miyuki round beads 15O. So again, you want to, just the way we did it before, you want to come out of that bead where you want to add the loops, the beaded loops and the clasps to. So I would take up maybe 3 beads. You put on your clasp and another 3 beads like this, and then you go up through that Miyuki Delica bead, you pull tight. So now you will have a beaded loop that goes right through one of those loops on your clasp. And then I would go through that beaded loop 2 more times. And another time. Now we need to get down to that second Miyuki Delica bead where we want to add that beaded loop to. So you work your thread down towards that bead. Like this. You take up 6 15-0 beads again. I mean, in the end it depends on how big you want your loops to be, but I'm doing 6 now. And you go through that loop on your clasp and through that Miyuki Delica bead. And you will pass through that loop 2 times more. So what I would do now is, before I weave in my thread, I would like to pass through all those Miyuki Delica beads again on the very last row. If we look from the left hand side to the right hand side, on that last row. So you pull your thread up again through those first 2 bead rows, looking from bottom to the top, and you go down again, and then you pass through all those beads again. Just to strengthen that final bead row another time. Like this, and then you weave in your thread again. So let's assume we did that. I mean, you saw it often enough, I guess, in this video. So what you will notice is, because those loops on that clasp are turned that way, that the bead loops will try to align with those loops on your clasp. So if you decide to use these wider magnetic clasps, I would advise you to get clasps that have their loops turned by 90 degrees, so that they're facing upwards instead of sideways. You know, like if you look at the clasp like this, that you would then be able to see through those metal loops. So then you don't have the problem with those turning beaded loops. So yeah, that's, I guess, the basics about the flat peyote stitch. that I find quite helpful to know. If you decide to go for the odd count peyote stitch, pay attention to your thread tension so that you don't get a curve into your bracelet or your choker or whatever you're doing or making, maybe a ring. Sorry about that bead there in the middle, it's the wrong color. Oopsie. So let me know which one of those clasps you will prefer. I definitely prefer the smaller one by far, even for wide bracelets. I think it looks pretty elegant, and I'm just not for the chunky supplies, I guess. I'm not a fan. I would definitely go for the lobster clasp anytime. I mean, you can also add, you know, those magnetic ball clasps. I have no idea how you call them, but there are many different tiny clasps you could use for such a bracelet. So this is it for now. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial about the peyote stitch. I think it's one of the easiest basic beading techniques that are out there. It's very rewarding to do because you can make very pretty chokers, bracelets, rings, earrings with it, and it's super easy to make motifs with it, so definitely check it out. There are so many different patterns you could find on Etsy and buy, or there are also patterns on Pinterest that you can get for free. So definitely check it out if you haven't tried the stitch before. It's very fun and very relaxing. There really isn't much you need to pay attention to, and it looks super pretty with Mucidelica beads, so cylindric beads, but you can also do a peyote stitch with round beads. But of course the beads won't fit as snug into each other because they're round, but you can still do it. And yeah, this is it for now. I will travel to Germany for a few days to visit my family, so I really can't tell whether I will be able to make another video for the first Friday in September, but I will try, but I don't know. So just so you know, time is tight as always, and I thank you all for dropping by today, for watching this video. Please, if you like this video, leave a like. If you have any feedback or anything you want to comment on, leave a comment, and please consider subscribing to my channel. Don't forget to check out both my shops, either the one for my handmade beaded jewelry or the shop for Czech clasp beads. Very soon I will start selling metal supplies also, but only those which are needed for some of the tutorials I post on here on YouTube, and for which I sell my digital downloads for. So if you're interested in those, please check it out. You can find the links down below, and you can also find the links to my social media and to my Amazon storefront if you're interested in any of those supplies and containers that I use. You can find information on there. But for now, I'm off. I wish you all a super nice and relaxing weekend, and hopefully I will see you in the next video. Bye!